In this video, we're going to be looking at recent changes made to Platt concerning the handling of care worker clashes. So, how we handle the case where two events with the same care worker assigned have overlapping planned times. Before we take a look at anything new, let's quickly recap how Platt has dealt with care worker clashes historically. In this tab, I'm using a previous version of Platt to assign a care worker, Will Kane, to a daily care event for Catherine Earnshaw, filling this gap at the end of Will's shift. Notice, however, that Will has a one-off event visiting Jack Reacher on Friday that will clash with a daily assignment at this time of day. The fact that Will is going to be unavailable on Friday will not prevent me from scheduling this new assignment though, because Platt checks all of the occurrences of the new event across a window configured against my organisation, and will only prevent it from being saved if the assigned care worker is unable to complete a certain percentage of those occurrences. In this case, the requirement is for 80% availability across a 10-week period, which Will's assignment will easily satisfy. But what should happen on Friday, on the day when this recurring event clashes with Will's one-off assignment? Notice how there is now a gap in Will's diary on Friday evening? The reason we're seeing this gap is because, historically, Platt's approach has been to consider a care worker with two clashing events to be unavailable for both of those events. So, in this case, neither the new daily event for Catherine on Friday nor the previously scheduled one-off event for Jack will be assigned to Will. Both events will show in red in their respective clients' diaries. Neither of the events will appear on Will's phone when he logs into Platt Mobile on Friday, and both will be subject to an unallocated event alert until at least one of them has been assigned to an alternative care worker. The approach of considering a care worker to be unavailable for both events in the case of a clash is certainly belt and braces, but in consultation with our user base, we've decided to adopt a more pragmatic approach going forward. This new approach has two overarching objectives. Firstly, wherever it is possible to do so, we choose one of the two clashing events for the care worker to remain allocated to, with the other event treated as unallocated. And secondly, where one event is chosen over another in this way, we explain this to the user by means of a warning at the point of the clash being introduced. The decision over which of the events to prioritize in the case of a care worker clash is made by applying three simple rules. Rule number 1. One-off events take priority over recurring events. Rule number 2. Recurring events that have been modified in some way, perhaps with the assignment of an alternative care worker, for example, will take priority over recurring events that have not been updated yet. And finally, rule number 3. In the very unlikely case that two recurring events, neither of which have been updated, introduce a care worker clash, the event which involves the shorter amount of travel time will be prioritized. There is in fact a fourth rule, but this is something that Platt has always done. Rule number 4 is that non-contact events, such as holidays, take priority over care events. I'll be spending the next few minutes demonstrating these rules using a new version of Platt which I have set up and ready to go in this tab. Let's start by looking at rule number 1. One-off care events take priority over recurring events. To demonstrate this, we'll use the same scenario that we just ran through using the older version of Platt. I'll begin scheduling a new daily care event for Catherine Earnshaw between 5:30 and 6 p.m. Notice how Will's name is shown in red as I begin typing it into the care worker box. If I hover over his name, we'll see why this is. Here, we're being warned that, in the next 10 weeks, Will would be unable to attend one occurrence of this new daily event due to a clashing one-off event in his calendar. If I select Will's name despite this, that warning will be repeated here. And again here, when I attempt to save the allocation. I can select Cancel if I decide against using Will for this assignment, or Yes to proceed despite this warning. Notice how Friday's occurrence of Catherine's new event is unallocated. Just as I was warned, Will has a clashing event on that day which has been chosen to take priority over this one. If I click on Will's name, I can see the prioritized event, this one-off event with Jack Reacher. Although Will is being treated as unavailable for Catherine's Friday event, he is still recognised as the regular care worker, and if I resolve the clash by moving Will's one-off event to an earlier time, he is automatically reintroduced as the care worker for that event. We've seen how a warning is displayed when assigning a care worker to a recurring event that will clash with one-off events already in the calendar. To see that the same will be the case when we do this in reverse, let's put the one-off event back to its previously scheduled time. Again, a warning is presented, this time making it clear that the event that I am updating now is going to take priority over another event if I proceed with this update. So that's rule number 1, with one-off events taking priority over recurring events. Rule number 2 is that updated occurrences of recurring events will take priority over other recurring events that are unchanged from their original scheduled visit. To see this rule in effect, let's take a look at Will's afternoon schedule. Here we see that Will has a daily 2 p.m. event with Lizzie and another daily event at 3:30 with Arthur. What happens if Lizzie's event needs to start an hour later than usual on Friday? If I attempt to change the event's planned time by dragging it like this, I receive a warning very similar to the ones that we've just been seeing. Here, I am told that the recurring event that I'm in the process of updating will take priority over Arthur's afternoon event if I proceed. And if I do choose to accept this warning, we see that this is indeed what happens. Will remains assigned to Lizzie's event, with Arthur's 3:30 event no longer showing here because Will is now being treated as unavailable for it. If we take a look in Arthur's calendar, we see that his 3:30 event on Friday afternoon is showing as unallocated now, and if I click here, we're told why. So that's rule number 2, updated recurring events taking priority over those which have not yet been updated. Rule number 3 concerns how a clash between 2 recurring events, neither of which have been changed from their original plan, should be dealt with. Because a clash such as this is likely to repeat over and over again, potentially dozens of times, it is clearly something that should be avoided. With this in mind, Platt will now prevent a recurring event from being scheduled if any instance of that event across the validation window will clash with another recurring event for the same care worker. Although this is rigorous and should avoid ongoing clashes in most cases, the fact that we can only check for clashes across a finite number of weeks means that there is a very small chance that a clash which only materializes beyond the validation window could still happen. To see what will happen in this very unlikely case, let's change Arthur's morning event, currently assigned to Will, so that it only occurs now every 4 weeks. And then, in another tab, let's assign a new event for Catherine at the same time of day. Notice how I am prevented from assigning Will to this event. If I add a question mark after his name, I am able to see the reason for this. When hovering the mouse over Will's crossed out name, I'm told that Will has a clashing event on June 27th. This is the next instance of his 4-weekly event with Arthur, and because both of these events are repeating, the clashing allocation is therefore prevented. Now let's change this new event for Catherine so that instead of taking place every week, it takes place every 3 weeks. Notice how I'm now able to assign this visit to Will. The reason we didn't receive any warnings or errors when saving this 3-weekly event is because the first times the cycles of a 3-weekly and a 4-weekly event will converge is in 12 weeks' time. Yet, our validation window is set to just 10 weeks. So that clash is not detected by Platt when scheduling either of the 2 events. Although the first future clash will be in 12 weeks' time, there is also a clash today. However, because that time has already passed, it wasn't included in the validation window when I was scheduling the 3-weekly event for Catherine. If I click on that event now, we see how Platt has handled this very unlikely case. Notice that Will is being treated as unavailable for this event, with his assignment to Arthur's event favoured on the basis that it involves a shorter amount of travel time. If I skip forward in Catherine's diary to 3 weeks from now, the clash does not occur because the 3-weekly and 4-weekly cycles are not converging, and so her event is assigned to Will as planned. I will eventually reach 12 weeks from now, where the cycles do converge, and Arthur's event is once again prioritised due to the shorter travel time. Clearly, I've had to jump through some fairly big hoops here to demonstrate the case where travel time will be used to choose which of 2 unmodified recurring events the care worker should remain allocated to in the case of a clash. In most cases, you will find that the clash will be prevented at the time of assignment, as seems most sensible to do given the ongoing nature of such clashes. And that concludes our look at how Platt will now apply 3 simple rules in order to select which of the events a care worker should remain allocated to in case of a clash. Remember that everything I've demonstrated here applies only to contact visits, and that non-contact visits such as holidays or unavailable time will always take priority. Remember also that there are still many cases where we have no sensible basis upon which to choose between 2 clashing events, and in this case the clash will continue to be prevented. The most obvious example of this is where 2 one-off events clash with each other.